Greetings, YouTube. This is going to be another video where I begin to try to understand the world better now that I know I have a diagnosis of autism. Now that I know why I have viewed the world the way I have. It hasn't changed my past. My past is a book. All our pasts are books. We can read them but never change them. But it's helping me understand why those pages were written the way they were. One of the things that I've come to understand to a certain level is that so much of what the allistic people I have known in my life seem to do, again, this is from my frame of reference, from my perspective, is that so many of them seem to think I can read their minds. And in actuality, what it is that I can't see their context. I can't see when they put up three things, I see three things. Whereas when they're putting up three things, they're seeing three things that are connected that lead to a fourth thing. And I don't see the connections, and I don't see the fourth thing because I can't. Because the handbook of how to be a human, I never got a copy of that. And it's frustrating because so many times people have just expected me to grasp something. For them, it's very clear. They've presented me to three things. Excuse me. They've presented me to three things, so obviously I must be able to see how they're connected, and I must obviously know that these three things lead to the fourth thing. Except I can't. I need it explained in excruciating detail. It is almost impossible to exceed my requirements of specificity. I am always looking for specificity. And I've discovered that over the years that because of the way I view the world, I'm really good at training people. Because I never assume that they connect the three things. I never assume that they see the clear path between those three dots. So I train people like they can't see them. Now this probably makes me come off as a pedant, and that's okay. I can live with that. But it means that when I'm done training someone, they actually know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, how to do it properly, and most importantly, why they are doing it. When so much of the allistic world seems to just assume that if you present somebody with the information, here's the information, that they will automatically grasp it. And that falls under the category of the whole concept of it's intuitive. Yeah, I've seen people talk about how technology is intuitive so many times. I wish I had a penny for every time I've heard it. I'd be a millionaire. My favorite example is Android. I have an Android phone. Now, at one time, I owned an Android tablet. Tabloid. I owned an Android tablet, and I had never encountered Android. Period. I had no experience with it. And at the time, my wife was an iPhone user, so she had no experience with it. So I'm coming into this absolutely cold. But the number of assumptions that the allistic folks I encountered when I was trying to figure this out was mind-blowing. They just would give what to me seemed like these little tiny drops of knowledge. Doink, doink, doink. And just expected you to be able to, from those tiny little pieces of information, understand everything that was going on with your tablet. Why? Because they had a solid foundation in Android. I have encountered this same problem when it came to online forms. I tried to send a PDF to my doctor recently, and the interface for the portal, the web portal that would let me get into all of my medical records and things like that, is absolutely opaque. I boom. I got one step into the process and I was just stonewalled. I couldn't go any further. And it took my wife time to figure out, but my wife has a long history of dealing with computer software, of dealing with business environments. So if you had been from a business background, I'm sure the ability to discover how to send a PDF to my doctor would have been super easy. Why? Because you had a background in that kind of worldview. And so to me, it always seems like allistic folks are expecting me to read their minds, that I am just supposed to understand stuff when I can't. And it just makes me feel dumb. I'm not dumb. I am very smart, actually. I've taken an effort to take what native intelligence I had and try to fill it with as much information as I could find on as many topics as possible, because I was desperately trying to find a way to make those connections that I couldn't. It's given me a lot of useful information, a lot of useless information. I've gotten better at picking up the useful more than the useless. And it's helped me understand that if I do something, I will get better at it. But because of the whole it's intuitive thing, too many times I have been presented with something that I couldn't get better at because I was basically figuring it out on my own. I was being presented with the situation and I was being asked to redesign the wheel when I didn't have to. When the wheel already existed and all I need is someone to show me how the wheel worked. And they didn't. Because they couldn't put themselves in the frame of reference to understand that there are people that don't know how the wheel works. And I wasn't at that time in my life able to articulate that, hey, I know that this is really super simple for you, that you've done this a million times, probably quite literally, but I don't have any idea what you're talking about. The words you're using, the actions you're taking are completely and utterly baffling to me. They make no sense. I need to know how they're connected. At the moment, they're not. I'm just looking at dots on a page with no numbers. So I don't know how to connect those things to make the picture happen. You need to show me what the numbers are in order so I can get this. And not a lot of people want to do that. So a lot of times I'm having to figure things out on my own. On the upside, I've discovered lots of things on my own that other people didn't know because I had to figure it out on my own. But I've also gone down a lot of blind alleys and gotten very frustrated. Oh, so frustrated. So many times. Because I was desperately trying to figure something out that someone else could have shown me how to do if they'd taken 5 minutes. And that is literally the truth. If they'd shown me, stood in front of me, and done it for 5 minutes, it could have saved me, and I'm not joking, literally years of frustration. But they don't. They explain it. And if you explain something to me, you are not making those connections for me. I am not getting it. Now I can articulate. Now I am able to, thanks to therapy, thanks to antidepressants, thanks to having an understanding that I have executive dysfunction, that I am autistic, I am now able to stand there and say, hey, yeah, I know this is super simple for you, and that you think your average 5-year-old should grasp this. But that's because your brain works one way and my brain works another. So explain this to me as though I have dropped from the sky, I am an alien and has no idea what you're talking about. And if someone does that, I can get it. But here's the thing. When you're training a new person, particularly a new person, and I've trained many people who are 18 to 20-year-olds, who's never walked into a manufacturing environment, they're in the same situation that I am. They are in this exact same boat as an autistic person that can't connect the dots. because they have never encountered this. And I always ask people when I'm training them, have you ever worked in manufacturing before? And their answer can help me know how much they actually probably already get. Now you do have the bombastic jerks who'll say, oh, I already know this, when in fact they do not know this. And all they do is end up making a lot of rejects or wasting your time, and they tend not to last very long. But the smart ones say, I've never done this. I had one person tell me, I said, what was your last job? She said, I was a caregiver. An absolute laudable job. I'm not dissing being a caregiver. But there's pretty much no connection between running an injection molding machine and being a caregiver. So I knew I was starting with someone who I really had to get down to square one. We had to start from the very basics. And eventually, I got her there. Took me a while, but she did. She eventually got it. And in fact, one day she finally made an observation. And it's an observation that I, who have a bigger technical background than her, noticed far earlier in my training process than she did. But it made me smile because she finally clicked. She finally saw those connections, and it made me smile. Because it wasn't something I had necessarily shown her, because it wasn't something that she necessarily needed to know at that skill level. It was going to come eventually, but she made that connection on her own. She made that observation, and it made me happy. I said, you're correct. That number is not the same as this number, and this is why. They're not going to be the same, because the programs are squishier than like the engineers that designed them will tell you they are. And that moment was precious for me, because I was watching someone finally see those connections get dook, 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 boom, there's the fourth thing. And it's a marvel. Made me very happy when she did that. And it's very happy. I'm very happy when I do it. Doesn't happen as often, because I've gotten better at understanding some things, but I also still struggle because I don't see those connections even now as clearly as I would like to. And another problem I have because of the executive dysfunction issues is if I don't do something regularly, if the span of time between doing the thing to last gets wide enough, boink, it disappears. It's like I've never seen the thing. If the span is close enough, yes, I can remember it. And the more times I do it, the slower that separation is. And if it's similar enough to something else, I may never truly forget it. I may fumble for a few minutes. I may have to poke on a number of different screens on a machine to figure out where it is, but eventually I'll get there. But if that interval between the last time I did it and now is a lot wide enough, it's gone. I don't remember it. It's just not there. The connection to that information has been severed. And so I frequently find myself rereading instructions. Thankfully, we have instructions for some things. They're so poorly written, it's astounding. And sometimes they'll say one thing when they literally mean the opposite. But I've been able to understand that the people that do technical writing are often under incredibly, unbelievably crushing pressure to do things fast, do them quickly, more, that they're not writing these things as exact as they should, or they could, because they just don't have the time. They don't have the ability to sit back and look at something and reread it a number of times and have a buddy come over and take a look at it and say, hey, could you check this? Does this make sense to you? If you were to never have seen this procedure, do you think you could figure out how to run it with this? They don't have that time. It doesn't lower the frustration when I'm trying to interpret what they wrote with what I actually have to do, but at least I understand the reasons that the instructions are written the way they are. Though I still get frustrated. I still do. So it really does seem to me like too many allistics think I can read their minds. My favorite example of recent memory is that my boss had put on the board that they needed X number of pieces of this number by morning. Or, by the end of the shift or something. The end of business day, I think it was. And I looked at it, I'm like, well, that's nice. So I went about my thing and I did my shift, and I didn't have those parts done by the end of the shift. And she's like, why did you have them finished? She said, you didn't tell me to finish them. She said, well, I said right there that we need this many parts by the end. I said, yeah, huh? That's not an instruction. That's a statement. If you want me to do them, then you say that we need to have this number of pieces by the end of the shift. Bingo. That's an instruction. That means I will get on that and make sure you have what you need by the end of my shift before I go home. But if you say, we need this by the end of business day, well, business day doesn't end when I go home. You've still got 16 hours of that day to go. 2 more shifts. And then you could even say the last truck, and well, the last shipment doesn't leave the building till like 4 or 5 p.m. That gives lots of time between when I go home and that truck leaves for you to fill those parts in. You didn't tell me you needed them by a specific time. You didn't instruct me you needed them by the end of my shift. And she just looked at me like I was crazy. Like, how did you not see that? And I tried to explain, that's a statement. It's not an instruction. For her, those 3 pieces of information led to the 4th thing. And for me, they were just separate pieces of information that weren't connected at all. Yes, it still pisses me off. So yeah, too many allistics seem to think I can read their minds. And they very rarely give me the degree of specificity I need. But if you give me the degree of specificity I need, you also would be giving that same degree of specificity to new people, to people that have never approached this before. So if you accommodate my disability, you would actually be making the lives of people who don't have my disability easier. And isn't that a good thing?